Welcome, folks. I am Jaby KOAY, joined by ACHARA KIRK.
Hello.
We're talking about Super Deluxe, and I've gone back and forth about whether or not to do a non-spoiler version of this review. If you guys want a non-spoiler bit about this, I'd say go watch it. That's my non-spoiler review. Just go watch it. Watch it for yourself to form your own opinion completely through and through. My recommendation is see it, and then come back and watch this spoiler review, because there is so much to unpack with this movie. Whether you like it or not, whether you appreciate the film or not, you should see it, because to me, it is definitely a bold endeavor, and I'll dive more into that in a moment after you, people who haven't seen the movie yet, leave.
Go watch it.
Yeah, like,
come back.
you don't want to have anything spoiled by this review if you haven't seen it yet.
Yeah.
This is from IMDb. An unfaithful newlywed wife, an estranged father, a priest, and an angry son suddenly find themselves in the most unexpected predicaments, each poised to experience their destiny, all on one fateful day. Just on a conceptual level alone, like, there are so many things I really liked about this movie.
Yeah.
On a conceptual level alone, I'm like, this movie speaks to me because I love these stories about different things going on. There are two movies that immediately come to mind. I have them here. So there's Pulp Fiction, that's one, and then one that a lot of people haven't seen, which is Brooklyn's Finest, which is about different cops in Brooklyn, and it's like their own separate stories that they're living out, and they just briefly kind of intersect with each other, but it's not really about their intersection. The point is their own individual stories all happening at the same time. I also felt a lot of American influences, or not American specifically, but Western influences. I don't know what Indian filmmaker influences there are, because I am not as well-versed in Indian cinema, as you all know, but I can point out some of them right off the bat. Like, there was definitely some Coen brothers, there was definitely some Fincher, there was Snatch, there was definitely a thing from Snatch, because there was a moment where they throw the TV and it kills the guy.
Yeah.
That's straight out of Snatch, because there's a scene where someone takes a carton of milk and says, "This will kill you," and he tosses it, and it causes an accident for other characters in the film. Crash was another one that came to mind.
Crash came to mind for me as well.
The reason why Crash comes to mind is because this film almost feels like, and this might be the wrong word, but it feels like a manifesto in a way. It's like this kind of, I'm gonna get everything I want to say about the world in this one thing.
There were certainly a lot of messages in there that either like the characters or the narrator
said. The last person I had in mind was Paul Thomas Anderson, who directed There Will Be Blood, because of the way it really took its time.
Yeah.
Like, it was noticeably slow. I liked it and I didn't. I liked it because I'm not used to seeing films at that pace in Indian cinema in general. But at the same time, I was like, okay, I feel like this could be picked up, but I don't hate it. It's his way of telling his story, and I appreciate it nonetheless. Girl with the Dragon Tattoo came to mind because of, well, the blowjob scene.
Yeah.
Like, that horrific moment felt like it was straight out of Girl with the Dragon Tattoo, because the same thing happened to Vijay Sethupathi. There were so many messages, and it's like, I appreciate all that, and it feels like something I would have done when I was like 20, writing a screenplay. I don't know how old he is. He seems like a young guy. Thea Garajan Kumararaja. He seems like a young dude. He's got all these things he's very passionate about that he's pushing into this film. I'm like, I did the exact same thing for films that never got made. But like, I recognize that ambition. He's using his characters as a means of communicating certain ideas. Like when they're in the elevator and he's complaining about different things going on with the city.
Yeah, like I think that guy, the husband, he is the one that is speaking the writer's voice a lot of the time. Like his opinions on politics.
It's all the characters.
Well, yeah, but like he straight up says stuff.
Right.
Like
he's the overt
one who's like, okay, this is what I think about the government. This is what I think about, you know, this, that, and the other.
Right. But I mean, the whole last 20 minutes of the movie of talking about porn stars and whatnot. That wasn't that guy. It was the mom who was in a porno at one point. The movie is talking about so many different things at the same time, and I'm like, okay, so it's just, the film is about society, is what it comes down to. That's really what this is about, because it's like, I was trying to kind of boil it down to, in its most simplest form, what is this story about? And it's basically reflecting back on society and us passing judgment on each other.
That, and just about life in general, that like we try and assign meaning to things that we think have a greater purpose, but really it's all just random.
Right, it's the whole religion thing, the religious aspect. I actually really dug the religious aspect of this, because the story I'm thinking of that hasn't been produced yet that I wrote has a whole bunch of religious connotations to it, like exploring that, if it's true, what it means, like, and the ideas of coincidence, and if that has any deeper meaning beyond what we project onto it.
Yeah.
I loved all that. The part where the movie really bugged me, and this is strictly speaking as an American filmmaker slash critic slash whatever you want to call it, slash someone who's just born in the States and has American sensibilities.
Right.
Where it lost me was the alien.
Yes.
I was like, okay, hold on. You just lost me, dude. Like, that right there. If you describe this story and to any American, and then follow that sentence with, and then an alien shows up, they're gonna laugh because it's like that. It feels so out of left field. Like it wasn't set up. Like somehow I feel like Thea Garajan should have set that up in the first 5 to 10 minutes of the movie and let you forget about it.
Yeah.
And then it comes up again. You're like, oh shoot, like. Because as long as you set it up, you can get away with anything, right?
Exactly.
And
it was kind of on a par when that happened with Zero and the whole space thing, but like not quite as bad. I didn't think it was bad. Let me just rewind.
We found a way to intertwine it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I liked the alien character in the end, but when she took off her body and I was like, wait, what movie is this? Where did that come from? That just... Whoa.
I would have liked it more if you never actually saw her. If you never actually saw that, if she was really an alien, like if she says she was.
Right.
And then instead of duplicating the guy, she just took him. Like she was so captivating that she just took him.
Yeah.
And so it's like, well, is she or isn't she? And you never actually find out. You as the audience have to determine that. But enough happens either direction that you could, argue either way. Mm-hmm. You know what I'm saying? Like if she just took him instead of splitting him up, like I don't know what the hell was happening in the movie at that point. Like that. Now there are so many questions that have to be answered now that you have that there. That's what the movie should be about if you're gonna have that happen, right? But I did love the line when she goes, "What you think aliens only show up in America?"
Yeah.
That tickled me senselessly. I was like, that's awesome. That's so awesome. One of the people I really appreciated, not as a character but as an actor, was the cop, the crooked cop, Bhagavathi Perumal, I believe is his name.
Yes, that's right.
He was so evil and so conniving and so manipulative and so freaking good. Like with the way he was pulling that performance, man, like I genuinely believed him as that yucky, ducky guy. Like, he just rubbed me the wrong way. And that is a testament to his performance being so good. Vijay Sethupathi, of course, like that goes without question how amazing he was.
He really moved me.
I will say, after the whole alien thing lost me, Vijay Sethupathi pulled me back in emotionally.
Yeah.
There was that scene with his son. The whole time I'm watching the movie, it's like every time I'm seeing interactions with him, I actually got a little bit emotional because I was like, this kid just wants a dad. He doesn't care who it is. He just wants a dad in his life. Who gives a shit who his dad is? Like this guy wants to be in his life. The boy wants him in his life. Just let them be. And like society's putting its own BS on top of it to make it harder and kind of getting their fingers in and pulling them apart. It's like, no, just let them.
Yeah, and it was kind of lovely, that whole moment at the end where it's like, you have two people who love you as you are.
Right.
Like, screw what everybody else says.
Right.
This is us right here. We're in front of you.
Not speaking the language. Sometimes I feel like I can tell when someone's doing good acting, and sometimes I feel like I can't. Fahad Fasil, it was hit and miss for me. Like, there were moments of brilliance in his performance, and there were other moments where I was like, okay, this is... And I didn't know if it was because of the way he was being directed, or that's just his choice. Particularly, like, in the elevator, when he's complaining, or in general, the crying. The crying, not his crying, but like anybody's crying. The only people who's cried well for me was Vijay Sethupathi and Samantha Ruth Prabhu. Like when they were crying, I believed it. But all the other guys in the film crying, I'm like, what? It felt theatrical. It felt like very, very like they're on a theater, on a play doing crying because they have to project so the back of the room can hear them. Like that kind of crying, you know what I mean?
Sometimes I just wonder if it's like a cultural way of crying.
Vijay Sethupathi didn't cry that way.
I know he didn't, but sometimes you see instances in the news of, in another country, someone has died and everybody's like crying in a very big, very theatrical way, which people in the West don't normally do.
But you just answered your own question. Or you answered your own thought, which is someone died. No one died in this instance. Like, I mean, like it was a TV that got broken. I mean, maybe he thought he was gonna die, so the kids were crying. Like, By the way, I love the kids in the movie.
Yeah, the kids were awesome.
Except for the crying with the fat kid. Like, I liked his character as well. I liked the bad guys that they were encountering. Like, all of these characters were so interesting just to look at. And that's another thing that kind of reminded me of Guy Ritchie, who directed Snatch. It's like just the way they were all sculpted. Everybody felt unique, and you didn't confuse anyone in the film whatsoever. Even amongst the kids who were not like as well defined as everybody else, I felt like they were defined enough that you didn't confuse who was who. You got the sense of who was kind of the nerdy guy who like only took enough money that they had to end up going back to get more money, and then the big guy who was crying over because he cheated on his girlfriend, like that never came back around. But like you knew exactly what kind of guy he was. You knew he was a pansy. And then the other one who I guess was the handsome one of the three who got duplicated. There was something that my eyes gravitated towards him. I don't know what.
He had a really great presence.
Yeah, he had a great look about him. I just thought he was cool looking. The alien thing, no.
Yeah, that was the only thing. I was like, I think the movie jumped the shark right here.
Yeah.
But then it kind of just came back around.
Well, it intertwines with the larger message. The belief system of the director is quite obvious because he's not religious. He's saying, why we shouldn't take religion at face value, why we should question it. And he comes from a very obviously scientific background because he's saying ever since we split single-celled organisms and where sex comes from. And he was right, like sex comes from around the time of single-celled organisms because sex was invented in order to create stronger offspring. Because before then, it was just like you'd replicate yourself and you'd have the exact same DNA. But in order to survive in new, harsher environments, cells had sex in order to create better offspring.
To diversify.
To diversify.
And I also really appreciated the message of unity because even within a single cell, we're made up of...
Well, he's talking about electrons and protons, neutrons, all that stuff. He's saying the same distance between all that is the same distance between planets in space.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And all of us as individuals, we can come together and become like one as well. That's what I got from the movie.
The director is someone I would definitely love to chat with and hang out with and just have conversations with. Like, this is someone who is a man after my own heart in a way. Like, I identify with a lot of what he's saying in the movie and it makes sense to me. The way he's using his characters to basically make his own complaints about society is hilarious to me and very true. It's true to me, like that's how you have to do it. It's a little bit more on the nose than I would have liked.
Yes.
But I still totally appreciate it because it's something I totally can see myself doing.
And I like the relationships between all the different characters. Every set of relationships had an arc.
I didn't even consider that. You said something kind of important there, which is every single character had an arc in this movie. Pretty much every character had an arc in this film.
Everyone had a journey.
Yeah.
In the beginning, the married couple, they don't really like each other that much, and by the end, you get this sense of like, maybe there's hope.
Yeah. There's also one other influence in there I forgot to mention, which is Weekend at Bernie's.
So
you guys, like, if you haven't seen Weekend at Bernie's, you need to check that out. It's an old American comedy, and there was two of them, but it's definitely in this film. The whole thing with the porn stars was very profound because I feel like that's something that we all sort of wrestle with, and I think we've all sort of thought about, at least any one of us who's been a critical thinker, who's tried to really be open-minded about things and people of, various upbringings and positions, occupations in life. Everybody, damn near everybody who's a grown-up has seen a porno video at one point and enjoyed it. And yet we all sort of judge these people. If I've met porn stars in real life and like I am not opposed to hanging out with them and being friends with them, but there is a part of you when you meet them where you're initially like, like some part of you judges them right away, even though you wouldn't take you but 2 seconds to flip open your laptop and watch them in a video.
Exactly. It's just how hypocritical we are as people to be able to fantasize about them, watch them, all of that. But as soon as it hits close to home, as soon as it's someone who's a family member, someone you're dating, someone who is a friend, then it's like, oh crap, it's too real. And then the judgment comes and all this rage.
Here's the one issue, I guess, with the film is that it's opening up a lot of different conversations, but it's not completing all of them. And it's impossible because it's opening up so many different conversations.
Well, yeah, and this is the thing that I'm saying about, the final epilogue. It kind of wraps everything up for you by telling you, oh, so by the way, these are all the messages that I was trying to get across in this story. And on the one hand, I liked it because I was like, cool, I see where you're coming from. And that's really smart and I love the messages. But on the other hand, I'm like, I wish I could have come to that conclusion myself without you having to tell me.
Oh, yeah, I already know what people would say to that. I've said that before, something like that. And Indian subscribers have told me that they have to do that with Indian cinema. They have to beat you on the head with information for you to get it.
Right.
It has to be more overt than you would have in a Western film because there's a lot of people who just it would just fly over their head. Now, there was an intermission during the film and an Indian woman walked up and spoke to me. She had no idea who I was. It was just an interesting moment because she's like, do you understand what's going on in this movie? I'm like, yeah, I got it. I understand. I'm reading the subtitles. I'm fine. And she's like, oh yeah, well, we don't get these movies very often in India. And I'm like, I know. But it was cool that, she was telling me that she just wanted to share with me some information. And I could recognize immediately that this was a very different kind of film for Indian cinema. And I really appreciate it just like in its endeavor, in what it's trying to communicate, its boldness, even though like I am not fully settled on all the ideas he's trying to communicate in the movie. I love the way he went about doing it.
We haven't even talked about how it was shot as well, because I thought it was very beautifully done.
I thought that was obvious with all the directors I'm mentioning. Like, all these movies in my hands are like very inspirational films.
Yeah, I mean, they're all fantastic movies.
There were some definitely amazing and inspirational shots throughout the film that were just very simple. He often was having you look through a doorway.
This is exactly what I was picking up on in the movie, and I'm like, what is the significance of that? Is it because, you know, we're kind of being a fly on the wall looking at their life? And I enjoyed that. Like, it was just a stationary shot. Voyeuristic, and they're kind of like, they're framed by the door, and they kind of come and go, and I was like, wow.
I forget where I first saw that, but it's very simple and very smart because the movie made great use of sound. If you watch it, you have to watch this movie in the movie theater because it makes incredible use of sound. The way you hear people moving around and stuff, this was very thought out in terms of the way it was produced. It really depends on that, right? Because when you're watching it through the doorway thing, like you hear characters coming from one side, you see what they're doing. It infers what's happening off screen half the time, and you see them go away. I liked all that stuff. I thought it was very cool, and the whole voyeuristic aspect of it, I can't say exactly what all of that means just yet. I'd have to sit on it and think about it, but I really appreciate it stylistically. There were so many cool moments, even when it got weird, and this again reminded me of Snatch Lock, Stock, and Two Smoking Barrels, Guy Ritchie's first movie. There's literally a dude hanging upside down in Lock, Stock, and Two Smoking Barrels who's kind of being tortured for information. And so the same thing kind of happened here where one of the villains of the movie was hanging his own guy upside down because he was pissed off at him. Either in that scene or a scene that was soon afterwards, the big guy doesn't want to get slapped with the slipper, so he runs and creates a much bigger problem for himself. And so the way that the stakes kept getting bigger and the problems kept getting bigger, I liked all that stuff. I liked that the problems kept escalating in their effort to resolve one thing. It just got worse until the very end. One thing I thought about while the film was going, I don't know if this is even... Yeah, I'm going to talk about this. Okay, so...
Okay.
I wondered why the guy died. The Bernie guy, the Weekend at Bernie's guy. Like, why did he die? And I thought about that, and I realized it might be possible the film already answered that question, which is the poison.
Well, I thought it was the poison as well. Maybe he just inadvertently ended up getting the poison, because he certainly wasn't the guy that they had initially been sent out to poison.
Exactly. So there's that. There's a little bit of a time mixture thing going on. One other movie that comes to mind, which is not nearly as entertaining as this, is Cloud Atlas, because you have a lot of different characters, and that's a very message-ridden movie, you know. So, but anyway, that's not the point. The timeline thing, right? So the cop was the one who mouth raped Vijay Sethupathi, right? And he's also the cop that was tracking down the couple. Yeah. It's the same guy.
Yes.
So I didn't quite understand the timeline there. Like, when did he get... what happened there?
Oh, now that you're mentioning it, I'm like, I hadn't even thought of that.
Because it's obviously the same guy. He behaves exactly the same way, same actor. It's clearly two separate moments in his own life. I'm just wondering what exactly moved him from one moment into the other, if he got demoted at one point and then was using this as leverage to get himself back up. The movie's also saying stuff about cops, by the way. Like,
gosh.
Every Indian film I've watched, almost every Indian film I've watched, is speaking ill about the cops in India, right? Mm-hmm. And this one takes it all the way in a way I haven't seen before in an Indian film. He's literally taking advantage of a transgendered woman in front of other cops, and the other cops are just like watching.
Ugh.
And that's sort of the point of the movie.
But that's exactly. That's the comment on trans people, right?
It's not just trans people, it's the comment on society, which is we're all just watching as shit goes down.
Like we're watching in the movie, watching through the doorways.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That's the point. And it's like if you showed this movie to any New Yorker, they would get it. They would totally understand the message of this film like that. They'll ignore a dead body in the streets.
There's a famous case of a woman who was killed in a full apartment building screaming, and not a single person came to her aid or called the cops.
Right. I mean, I know New York might be a little bit different since, post September 11th, but I mean, that's traditionally what New York was known for, was just being that kind of cold in that way, even though if you know people there, they're warm to you. But anyway, that's a whole other conversation.
Touching back on the transgender issue, I mean, I think having all these people kind of treat her so badly and call her it instead. I have been in situations where, people have teasingly said things like, oh, what is that? What is he? What is she? Is it a he, she? Is it an it? and then you just kind of like forget that in doing that, you're dehumanizing them.
Right, you're belittling them.
You're belittling them.
One person we haven't talked about yet is the kid. We haven't spoken about his acting.
Oh my goodness, how cute was he?
He was really, really good. Now, he's a
So
great...
good.
So, okay, one of the things I've been talking about recently, and you guys can help me with formulating my own opinion on this one, if it's just a language barrier thing. One of the things I've been talking about recently with these other films that we've been seeing, what was it? Captain Marvel and then Shazam. There were kids in there where I was like, they're banking on cuteness for these kids, right? Like, their performance was serviceable, but it wasn't great. It was just enough, and the rest, their cuteness got you the rest of the way.
Yeah.
Whereas here, I feel like cuteness was just par for the course, whereas his performance was excellent.
He was very good.
Like, he genuinely felt like a kid who was a kid, as opposed to a grown-up telling him how to be a kid, as opposed to a grown-up telling him how to act. I felt like I was watching a kid in this endeavor who was just genuinely longing for a dad.
Yeah, so excited.
And going, exactly, and doing all those things. It felt genuine. Like, that's what I loved about his performance. Now you can understand, like, contextually or contrast what I'm saying.
I think I understood what you meant before, but definitely looking at this kid and some of the kids we've seen in Hollywood, he really does seem like a real little kid.
I feel like this is the kind of movie you can talk about
at length
for hours, because there's so much here. Overall, I enjoyed it. I have no regrets about watching it. I think that there's so much genius in the movie, but there's also a number of caveats that go with it. There's a number of parts that I feel like are strong shortcomings, but they wouldn't stop me from recommending the movie. It wouldn't stop me from buying the movie. I would totally want to own this movie and watch it again and take it apart and study it, share it with friends.
Yeah.
Like, this is definitely one of those films I would want on my shelf and to share and talk about with people, because I think that there's so many marvelous things in it that are rare. You don't see them very often. I mean, worldwide cinema, you don't see them very often, and I think it's great. I commend the director, and I'm very interested in watching his other movie, Aranya Kandam, which came out in 2011, and it's also got an 8.6 out of 10. So I'm definitely interested in watching that, and I'm hoping that it's just as interesting. Do let us know your thoughts on our thoughts, your thoughts on the film. Subscribe if you haven't already. Check out our other reactions, reviews, short films, vlogs, interviews. I'm Jaby KOAY. This is
ACHARA KIRK.
Peace out.